There is an urban myth which asserts that an a priori conflict exists between science and religion. One of these modern myths asserts that our ancestors derived their sense of importance from a belief that they stood at the very geometric center of the universe. But then along came brave scientists like Copernicus and Galileo who challenged that view by arguing the Earth revolves around the sun. This supposedly upset tradition bound religious leaders because, according to the myth, it meant the universe was not human centered. And so the narrative goes. As science marched on, astronomers discovered that our sun is just an average star, one of an estimated 100 billion stars in a single galaxy, which is itself one of hundreds of billions of galaxies in a very large and very old universe. Therefore, the myth contends, unlike the medievals, who thought humans were pretty hot stuff, we moderns now realize that humans are in fact insignificant. Hi, I'm Father Doug McGonagle. I'm a Roman Catholic priest who also happens to be a radio astronomer. If you find my musings interesting or perhaps even thought-provoking, please hit the like button and subscribe. You might even want to click the notification bell too. Since I'm the full-time pastor of not one, but two parishes, I have to squeeze the making of these little video indiscretions into my busy schedule, as my duties allow. And so their posting will be catch as catch can. As I mentioned, the science versus religion conflict myth is of relatively recent origin. Historians point to John William Draper's book, published in 1874, History of the Conflict Between Religion and Science, as one of the first times the conflict thesis was seriously proposed by someone with scientific standing. Draper was an English scientist, philosopher, and physician who emigrated to the United States and later became the first president of the American Chemical Society and founder of the New York University of Medicine. Not too shabby. Historians also point to American historian and educator Andrew Dixon White as a co-founder of the conflict thesis, pointing to his book, History of the Warfare of Science with Theology in Christendom, published in 1896. White, who was a co-founder of Cornell University, said that Cornell would be, quote, an asylum for science, where truth shall be sought for truth's sake, not stretched or cut exactly to fit revealed religion, end of quote. Contemporary historians have largely rejected the conflict thesis. Nevertheless, the conflict myth remains popular with critics of religion and has permeated our popular culture. My lived experience as a scientist who is also a priest makes it clear to me that many people still buy into the conflict myth. The incredulity expressed almost every time folks learn that I have both a PhD in astronomy as well as a Master's of Divinity underscores how prevalent the conflict myth remains even to this day. The received wisdom that science and religion are in a permanent state of conflict is problematic for many reasons, but let me mention two simple ways that bad historicity leads to bad conclusions. As I mentioned earlier, the conflict myth tells a story of how our ancestors derived their sense of importance from the belief that they stood at the very geometric center of the universe. But then along came brave scientists like Copernicus and Galileo who challenged that view by arguing the Earth revolves around the sun. Furthermore, as science advanced, not only did it become apparent that the Earth was not the center of the universe, but old Sol itself turns out to be just one of billions of stars and one of billions of galaxies in an immensely large and incredibly old universe, which only underscored humanity's insignificance. This supposedly upset tradition-bound religious leaders because, according to the myth, it meant the universe was not human-centered, which, according to the conflict myth, infuriated the ecclesiastics. Since neither side would give in to the other, conflict ensued. Now, right away, we have two problems. First, While it is true ancient peoples did not have telescopes and other instruments to study and measure the universe, nevertheless, they understood the universe was incalculably immense. For example, in the Old Testament, we hear God promise Abraham that his descendants would be as countless as the stars of the sky and the sands of the seashore. The power of this statement derives from the fact that Abraham considered the sky and stars, that is, the universe, to be vast, and so his posterity would be vast in number. So the first flaw in the science versus religion myth is simply this. Folks have known for a very long time that Earth is a very small part of a much bigger universe. They've also known for a very long time that the Earth is round. They even had a pretty good handle on the Earth's size, but that perhaps is a story for another video. Speaking of future videos, if you find my musings of any interest, please hit the like and subscribe buttons along with clicking the notification bell so you will know when a new video is posted. Now back to the story. The second problem and more important flaw of the myth is this. The ancients did not necessarily consider the center to be a privileged position. For them, Earth was not so much the center of the universe as it was the bottom of the universe. Dante's epic poem, the Divine Comedy, immortalized this vision. According to Dante's medieval cosmology, the saints and angels dwell with God in the outer celestial spheres, while the very center one finds hell with Satan frozen in ice. So it is inaccurate to say that the pre-Copernicans gave the Earth, and by extension humans, the position of highest esteem by placing us at the center of the universe, while Copernicus and those that followed relegated us to an insignificant backwater. We would speak more accurately by saying that the ancients understood the Earth to be at the bottom of a vast universe, which only underscores our small, fragile place in the universe while envisioning something more awesome above and beyond our planet. We see that perspective play out in the Gospel of Matthew, chapters 17, verses 1 through 9, where the evangelist tells of the transfiguration of Jesus in the presence of his disciples, Peter, James, and John. Jesus takes his intimate disciples up a high mountain, up and away from the earth, away from the bottom of the universe, one might say. Things are certainly better there because upon the mountaintop, above the rest of the earth, they glimpse Jesus' magnificence, his divinity shining through his humanity. Peter, always given to enthusiastic outbursts, wants to set up camp, but Jesus indicates some serious business he has to attend to down below, which must happen before he rises. Jesus had his disciples climb a mountain in order to give them a new perspective. What we experience when flying in a plane, taken for a moment above the conflict and burdens of this world, taken to a place that gives us a new perspective, is perhaps similar. Looking out the plane's window, we can meditate on the transcendent beauty that underlies our everyday reality. Unfortunately, this new perspective can never last. As long as we are of this world, a certain heaviness pulls us back down to the bottom of the universe. And this is exactly why it is so important for us to regularly take a moment to lift our eyes above our everyday toils and troubles, and so remind ourselves that we are not the center of the universe. Oh no, we are in fact something much, much more. Michael Straczynski, in his epic space opera Babylon 5, does a better job than I ever could putting into words what I want to say. In the episode titled Passing Through Gethsemane, Brother Edward, a Christian monk, makes it his project to go around asking the main characters of the series what their core beliefs are. When he interviews the Minbari ambassador Delenn, she says this: "We believe that the universe itself is conscious in a way that we can never truly understand. It is engaged in a search for meaning. So it breaks itself apart, investing its own consciousness in every form of life. We are the universe trying to understand itself. Admittedly, her response sounds more like Orthodox first-century Stoicism than it does Christianity. However, she ends with a line which has stayed with me ever since I first watched the episode as an astronomy graduate student way back in the early 1990s. We are the universe trying to understand itself. I think Straczynski is onto something. The idea that we humans are the universe trying to understand itself rings true for me, but there's more to it. As a Christian, I believe there is more to existence than just the material. There is something, someone, that created all that is of space, time, and energy. Science, the study of the interplay of space, time, and energy, could also give us insight into the one who brought it all into existence. In fact, back at the start of the scientific revolution, the Lutheran astronomer and mathematician Johannes Kepler felt that the study of the cosmos was analogous to, quote, thinking God's thoughts after him. The science versus religion conflict myth claims that science has banished Earth from the center of the universe and has thereby stripped the human race of its privileged place in creation. This view is a myth, in my humble opinion. It is an error. In fact, I will go so far as to contend that the conflict thesis is itself a slander against science. Science, that great human adventure, stillborn so many times in so many places, fully emerging as a self-sustaining human activity in a culture steeped in the Judeo-Christian worldview, which allows us to rethink God the Creator's thoughts. Science has revealed to us a creation more magnificent, more subtle, more nuanced than we could ever have imagined. But there are those who have perverted science in order to justify their using human beings as a means to an end. We need only look to the wars of secular materialism of the last century to see what happens when human beings are no longer seen as the image of God, but as mere animals to be used and slaughtered like animals. But I wager that if you've watched this video this far, you, like me, have always suspected there is more to existence than simply the material. For me as a Christian, doing science is like prayer. It helps me to better appreciate the one who created it all, the one in whose image I am made. And if you're interested in learning more about the science versus religion conflict myth, then please check out my book, Holy Scientists, published by the Catholic Truth Society of London. I have a link to my book in the description below, along with a small bibliography of books by other authors that you may find interesting. Till we meet again, in all the good that you strive to do, Godspeed.